everyone, Alexa Dunn here, and today I'm going to be talking about some of the downsides of being published super young. This kind of came up in my advice for teen writers video, and this is something I've been kind of developing some feelings on for a while because we've seen a real shift in the traditional industry, specifically in the young adult market, and I mean a huge shift in the last couple of years, where it used to be most people debuting and having books coming out were at least 30, but now it's far more common for people who are getting book deals to be in their early to mid-20s, which isn't a bad thing, but it does bring up some things I've observed over the years. Like, this goes way back. There have always been wunderkinds, like outliers in publishing who got published super young, but there are some pitfalls to being published super young, and it came up in the teen video because I was saying that, like, you can pursue publishing and you might get published, but there are downsides to everything. And I by no means want to come off as the old fogey complaining about kids these days. I'm not even that old. I mean, that's part of the strange thing. For a very long time, someone around my age in their 30s, I'm 35, that was considered very young to have a book published. And outside of YA, it's still considered very young to have a book published. So if you're watching this and you're older, don't worry. In most areas, it doesn't really matter. You can definitely be older and get your first book published, a book published. And same thing if you're younger, you definitely have a shot at getting published as well. Ultimately, it's a good thing that the door is opening wider for younger individuals to get published, but the downsides. Some of these downsides can also happen in indie publishing, but as always, I am definitely more familiar with traditional publishing, and I think some of these outlier cases in traditional publishing, they blow up so much bigger and the effects are much bigger. So there are three main trends that I've observed in people who get published really, really young. And the first one is that they develop insane egos and they kind of turn into assholes. In publishing, there are a couple of very notorious cases. There are individuals in my world who just everyone knows that they're basically a total diva. And part of the problem we attribute to this is that basically they bumped from success to success. Basically, as a very young person, we're told that they were super, super talented and the sun shone out of their ass and they got a huge book deal. Then they became a bestseller and basically it went to their head. This kind of ties in with a criticism that people make of the millennial generation a lot. Old millennial here, but many of these people were young millennials, or even mid-millennials when they broke out and got these deals. The entitlement and the idea that a whole generation, I believe this also trickles down to Gen Z, have been sheltered by their parents' participation trophies and basically never really having to experience failure, basically bumping from success to success. And when you don't experience setbacks and you're told you're amazing, you believe it. It's not even that you start to believe it, you believed it in the first place, right? And it can lead to ego. I have definitely seen some bright young things honestly just become really unpleasant people and they end up not having any friends. And you can have tons of success and sales and fans and a lot of money, but no one likes you. And I guess you just have to kind of weigh, which do you want? I mean, in fairness, don't we all want riches, but it's just never a good look to be mean and ungrateful and be super, super full of yourself. And this one ties into one of these other trends that I've seen, which is stagnation of writing talent. So in the Advice for Teen Writers video, I did warn you, I disclaimed you, I let you know, because it's true. Talent is relative when you are younger, and you can be a wunderkind, you can be really impressive for your age, and that's great at your age, and there can be great potential for breakouts. But the thing is, as you get older, something that you were super talented at when you were younger, unless you continually develop your skills or are literally like a rare 1 in a million genius, other people will catch up to you as you get older. That's why so many people who were like super smart or talented in high school end up really washing out and having rough times in their 20s and 30s because all their peers catch up to them. This is in any area, not just writing, but specific to writing. What I have seen happen with multiple people who broke out and were very successful when they were very young. I'm talking people who wrote a book in college and got it published and they were a bestseller by the time they were 22, like those sorts of cases. I've seen some of them. This doesn't happen to all of them. Basically just, they never have to level up their writing or their storytelling craft because they're a millionaire before they're 25. They're a bestseller. They have fans who will buy their books no matter what. They have publishers throwing money at them. And this one I think many of you can identify. I might not be thinking of the same people you're thinking of, but I think we all have an example, can think of a few examples of people, and this has happened in YA especially, of a person who published a book when they were super, super young and it was a huge hit and we loved that book and we've been disappointed with all of their books subsequently and we can't quite put our finger on it. I can think of multiple examples for this actually. So I'm not calling out a specific person. And the reason for this is that that writer basically got stuck in a rut, whether they wanted to or not. I think sometimes it's the arrogance. This is the arrogance piece. If someone does develop the ego and the arrogance and is a diva and kind of a jerk and they think they're amazing, they don't think they have to ever improve or get better. They're just gonna kick out the same book or kind of book that they did the first time. And sometimes they're rewarded for it and sometimes they're not. But that is one way that it happens. And the other way is unintentional. In some cases, people who break out super, super young aren't allowed to develop or change as writers because publishing won't let them, their readers won't let them, they get, pushback if they try to do something different. And it can just be really hard to experience the pitfalls and relative failures of writing that one does tend to need to go to become a better writer. It's trial by fire. Every time that you write something and it doesn't work, every time that you query a book and you almost get there, or you get an agent but it doesn't sell, so on and so forth, all of these setbacks make us better writers. And when a writer never got that and isn't allowed to kind of fail safely, so to speak, they're forced to perform and do it on a public stage, and the pressure can be overwhelming. And so I've just seen writers who were so talented, I was so impressed by them when they were younger, basically just stagnate. And I think it's really sad. These are writers that I want to see have a fruitful long career and grow as writers, but I keep seeing where I'm like, I feel like the book that they wrote when they were 21 is just the same as the book they're writing when they're 31. That said, there are tons of exceptions to this. There are a lot of people who broke out very, very young in YA specifically who have defied these kind of trends, these pitfalls, and have grown into even stronger, better writers. But it's kind of 50-50. Just as often as I see someone kind of break the chains, I've seen someone fall into one or both of these first two pitfalls. Which brings me to the third thing, which is kind of a minor thing, to be honest. And it's not something that we've seen a long tail on. It's just something I'm beginning to observe that I'm a little concerned about. And this is the trend I'm seeing of incredibly young writers, not just getting book deals, but getting book deals for a good amount of money and getting a lot of buzz, in part because of their youth. You may have observed this as well. There are so many book deals now that specifically call out how young the writer is, or want to point out they wrote it when they were a senior at XYZ school. There's this marketing that goes into, oh, they're young. This is extra buzzy because they're young. And the thing about publishing, traditional publishing, especially YA, it's very buzz focused. The buzz is fleeting. Very little of it lasts. And very few books actually break out. And by breakout, I mean, it's not just become bestsellers like once. I'm talking like a book that breaks out in a big way and guarantees a writer a long-term, lucrative and stable career. Most authors just don't have lucrative and stable careers. I've covered this on the channel before, and many of us are pretty aware of this, that most writers have day jobs. And it's very difficult. It's tricky. It's not impossible, but it is difficult to make a full-time living as a writer, or at least as a writer which wants to make a full-time living. I have a whole video about IP, which is an interesting one for you to watch if you want to know how many working writers stay afloat. They do packaged books, or they do IP, or they do ghostwriting. There are ways to make money off of writing consistently, but it's not always pretty, and it's not always about kind of writing exactly what you want to write. Basically, the industry is just super, super unpredictable. And what I've seen a lot of more and more lately is the people who get these big breaks and opportunities very, very young, I've seen this in indie publishing as well, don't have a plan B. In many cases, they're graduating from college. In some cases, they're not going to college, which is a whole other topic. But they're graduating from college and they never have to get a day job of any kind. They never have to do anything in their youth, in this young part of their life, that isn't being an author with a capital A. And the thing is, I worry for an entire generation of writers who aren't developing any work skills. Because what's going to happen in 5 years, 10 years if they're really lucky, some authors get 10 years, when the money from writing books just dries up, when their brand isn't as sexy because they're not a hot young thing, or the market shifts and they're no longer writing books that sell, what are they gonna have to fall back on? I mean, if they're lucky, they marry rich, but I'm worried that we have an entire generation of writers who won't have any work skills that exist outside of traditional publishing. And there's going to be a bubble that's going to burst. And so my advice to younger writers is always keep your work skills fresh. Major in something in college if you go to college, or otherwise go to like a technical school. Develop something that you're good at that is not writing. That is also not YouTube, by the way, or freelance marketing or freelance editing, because those have lots of pitfalls and aren't really stable either. But unless the marketing is like, you work for someone in marketing, but develop a marketable skill set, get a job, and keep your resume fresh. This is the old fogey in me talking, but I am so grateful that I have now 10 plus years, because I've been in the working world for 11 years, 12, that I have work experience under my belt. And by having a job this whole time, because I wasn't pursuing writing the whole time that I've been working full time to support myself and pay my rent, because there is no rent fairy, I've learned really valuable work skills. I have a strong resume. If I decided to try to write full time for a few years, I would have something to go back to. Not just the skills on my resume, but connections, relationships with people, and some really great companies. And you can only develop those skills through time and experience. I'm just worried about all of the writers who are gonna turn 30 and realize they don't have anything to fall back on. So that's kind of the 3 things that I think are the downsides to being published really, really young. Honestly, I think the worst one is the writing that stagnates, because I've seen that happen more than once. And it's really kind of the same thing, because then that's gonna be someone who's 35 and doesn't have anything to fall back on. If they're lucky, the book money lasts. That only happens if you're a mega, mega huge breakout and your books are still bought 15, 20 years later. But for so many people, I'm just worried. I worry. There are really honestly pros and cons no matter when you decide to write a novel and you decide to get published. And if you're a young writer out there, because there's more and more of you, it's just key to be aware, to not rest on your laurels, as I said. Like, you'll be totally fine if you succeed young, as long as you keep in your mind that you are not a fully formed writer yet and that you can definitely get better. Don't ignore criticism or negative kind of feedback on your work. Listen to it and do what you can to get better. And if you're an older writer, if you just don't start writing until a little bit later, it's not all smooth sailing for you either. There's plenty of pitfalls to being older doing this as well. But hopefully, I shouldn't just say older, I should say more experienced, because it really depends on when you start to develop your writing skills. So the point is, start early, never stop growing. Don't get an ego, don't become a diva, because the thing is, it's literally publishing's job, if they buy a book from you, to blow smoke up your butt for a period of time. And if you sell a lot, it doesn't stop. But let me tell you, if you don't break out huge, the smoke blown up your butt stops. So honestly, never believe your own hype and just like stay humble, keep working on your writing. It's never too late to improve. Even if you are a best-selling author, that doesn't mean that you are perfect and fully formed. So yeah, just don't be complacent and don't become an asshole. Let me know down below in the comments what you think about this topic. Let's be careful about like calling out specific authors because I don't want this to be like a dirty gossipy thing, but also we can all think of someone who got published really, really young, who kind of petered out on their career, but we can also think of people who got published really, really young who are only getting better with time. So it's a mixed bag. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. I post new videos 2 to 3 times a week. Thank you so much for watching, and as always guys, happy writing.